Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of The Liz Wheeler Show. If you would take a moment to subscribe to this show, I would greatly appreciate you, even more than I already do. We have a very special guest joining us today on this episode. Glenn Beck, the one and only, will be joining us in about 60 seconds. He's here today with us to warn us about a looming threat that's facing us here in America. Now, we hear the term, the topic that we're going to talk about today a lot these days, the Islamification of America. And many of us, when we hear that phrase, assume that this Islamification of America is going to be inflicted on us via grisly jihadi terror attacks, maybe 9/11 style, maybe lone wolf attacks like the ones we've seen this year. But Glenn Beck says, no, that's not it. Well, if it's not terrorism, and it's not war, then how is this going to go down? Do you know how the Islamists are going to take over our country, our neighborhoods, our cities, our states? Many of us assume it's going to be inflicted on us with these very scary, unknown plots from jihadists, these violent attacks. But the actuality, the tactic of the conquering Muslims is a little more calculated than that. It's methodical. And it's not somewhere down the road in the distant future. It's here, right now. The evidence is under our very noses. And if we don't recognize this threat that has already infiltrated us, if we don't put a stop to it, then we may soon face the chilling reality of Sharia law right here in the United States of America. Because make no mistake, as far-fetched as that may sound to say the words, that is the stated goal of our enemies. Now, with us now is founder of The Torch. He's also the host of the Glenn Beck program. You can find him on glennbeck.com. It is the one, the only Glenn Beck. Glenn, good to see you.
How are you, Liz?
I am doing well. Although I have to say, your new special is a little frightening to watch.
Then I have done my job. Because that's what I'm supposed to do, I think. It is frightening, but it's in the end, I think it's hopeful. I hope it is, because it's very, very clear. You know, one of the things that we tried to do is take it from the very beginning. I've been following this story. You've been following this story. You know how it all started, but take it back into the 90s and show this whole thing. And so we build the case piece by piece using their own documents. And I think that's what's frightening. This isn't opinion. This isn't a theory. This is a fact. And it's based on their own words, their actions, and their own documents. And you opened it up a minute ago saying, it's not going to come from terrorism or some, grisly jihad. Why would it? At one point in the documentary, I go to the chalkboard and I'm showing, look at what happened after 9/11. What did we do? We started DHS, we started checking the airports, and we became hyper vigilant of terrorism. But we didn't put anything into place for a slow takeover. And the slow takeover, it's like Japan. You don't ever want to wake a sleeping giant. 1941, they woke a sleeping giant. This right now is still, in most people's mind, crazy and far-fetched. Even though the evidence is everywhere, it's crazy and far-fetched. It's not. But the minute you would start doing strikes, the minute you would start planting bombs, then people wake up to it. And that's going to be harder to pull off. Keep America asleep. Keep America in the place to where half or more say, that's just a conspiracy theory, and they won't take the steps to look into it. That's how you take over a civilization.
Well, the whole thing actually somewhat reminds me of how, and you and I have talked about this at length, how the Marxists have infiltrated our institutions. Because you say those words, and it doesn't necessarily give you that chill up the spine that the idea of, oh my goodness, if I go to an NFL football game or just to the, to church, am I going to get shot up by a radical Muslim lone wolf jihadi? And I think that's probably part of the strategy. I want to watch this clip with you.
Sure.
And yes, it does have your chalkboard in it, which I like. But I want to watch this clip with you from your special because it lays out not just their plan for the future, but basically what's already happened. That this plan is, I mean, I'll ask you a percentage of how far along they are in
Sure.
implementing this plan afterward, but let's go ahead and watch this together.
In 2001, Swiss authorities raided the home of a Muslim Brotherhood operative. His name was Yosef Nada. They discovered documents outlining what the Brotherhood internally called the Project. This is a copy of it. It dated back to 1982, and its stated goal was to establish an Islamic government on Earth. Now pause that. That's a pretty big goal, right? Pretty massive statement. Not a mosque. They're not doing a charity, not community service. A global government. And the method described in this document is not invasion. It wasn't flying airplanes into buildings. It was institutional penetration, temporary cooperation with non-Islamist groups, flexibility according to local conditions, to work through institutions, and to gain control of local power centers. In other words, blend, adapt, influence.
One of the most controversial examples of this quiet yet forceful influence dates back to 2010 in a move made by New York City that sickened many Americans throughout the nation.
As a concerned citizen of New York,
opponents call it a mosque in the worst possible place.
This building in particular should be turned into a museum.
Supporters call it a cultural center in the best spot to encourage understanding.
If a mosque were built, then you guys would know what Islam was about.
At issue, this building in Lower Manhattan, the proposed site of a 13-story community center and Islamic prayer space.
This is the Muslim community's effort to rebuild Lower Manhattan.
The controversy? It's only 2 blocks from ground zero.
The community center, which houses a mosque, was pitched by real estate developer Sharif El Gamal, who said he had a spiritual awakening after 9/11.
The debate about the Ground Zero Mosque, that very building, was struck by some of the debris from one of the planes that crashed into the World Trade Center, is all the more ironic and outrageous, really, when you think that the guy who is the mayor of the city of New York at the moment is a jihadist. If you don't think that every Sharia supremacist on the planet is not only taking note of that, but taking heart from it, this seeming, 25 years later, conquest of New York, our most important city, arguably, they're getting it, and they are emboldened by it and seeking to redouble their efforts, as the Quran says, to make us feel subdued.
I mean, when I hear those words, Glenn, the words that stick out to me the most in this is when you talk about local power centers and institutions that they have infiltrated cooperatively with other groups. This does not signal to me something that's happening in the future. This signals to me something that we're only just observing that has already happened.
So, Liz, we need to get people to watch the special. And by the way, it comes out on YouTube tomorrow. I'm making it free, but it had to be highly edited because of YouTube standards. But it is, at least it's something. And then we have a booklet that we printed. It's all free booklet and about 2.5 hours of the raw interviews that you didn't see on air that lay everything out. So I'm giving you a toolkit, because you have to bring this to your church. You have to bring this to your friends. You have to bring this to anybody who will listen. I don't have a problem with somebody's religion. If you're a Muslim, that's fine. If you're an Islamist, that is political ideology, and it is incompatible with the Western way of life. It is incompatible. We do not look. If I don't have a problem with, we talk about halal food and how halal food is a sleeper that is coming in to make you comfortable with certain things. For instance, let's say dogs. There's an argument that some people are saying that there shouldn't be dogs in New York because they're not halal. Well, they're taking that a step further now in London. They just did a poll and a study. Is there a problem with dogs in London? we wouldn't be having that conversation at all if it wasn't for the Islamists that are there. You don't have a right to come into our country and start changing our culture, especially when it is politically based with Sharia law. And this has happened exactly this way over and over and over again. That's the problem. When I can show you all of the evidence, but then in the special, I show you the history where it has happened in Iran. When you get to Iran, you look at 1979. That was not an Islamist revolution. That was a Marxist Islamist revolution. What they do, and it's now called the Green Red Alliance. I said it was up on my chalkboard for 3 years when I was at Fox, saying the Islamists, the communists, the socialists, and the anarchists will all work together to destabilize the Middle East, Europe, and eventually America to destroy the Western world. Well, that's what's happening. That's called the Red Green Alliance. And in 1979, the Islamists went to the Marxists in the universities and said, look, you're against this system too. You guys organize the schools, we'll organize the mosques, and together we'll have enough momentum on the streets to overthrow the government. That's exactly what happened. Then, where are the Marxists now? In the next 2 years, 60,000 of them were rounded up, tortured, and or killed. That's what happens in the end.
Iran.
In Iran. This is the same exact story in Iran, and you can point to it in country after country. It's what they're doing right now in France, in Germany, in Norway, and Sweden, in England. It's happening all throughout the Western world. Where are all these refugees from? What great crisis has caused millions of people to claim refugee status? And now that Syria is back on its feet, why aren't you going back home? Because that's not what this is about. Why is it that all these refugees come and they're not bringing their children and their mothers? Why is it all mainly military-aged men? Why? Because this is not about refugee status. This is a plan of infiltration, colonization, and taking over the Western world, destroying the Western world. And we've fought this battle over and over again. You know, I saw something in the news today. The France looks like they're going to start paying Iran a tax to be able to get their oil out of the Straits of Hormuz. You know what that made me think of? The Shores of Tripoli, our song from about our Marines. Our first foreign war was against the Barbary pirates, the Islamists, who felt that they could just take the West's treasure, take their people, their ships, their soldiers, the women, rape them, sell them into slavery. And Thomas Jefferson didn't understand what the hell was happening. We were paying, I believe it was half to 2/3 of our budget by the time he was in the presidency as bribes. The West was paying bribes to get them to leave our ships alone. France did it. Everybody did it. It's replaying itself now in the Strait of Hormuz. You can get your oil out. You just pay us. It's happened over and over again.
It's unreal. And you said something that I haven't heard before. I mean, we follow the Islamification of America quite closely on the Liz Wheeler Show, but this conversation that happens or happened between Islamists and Marxists, we talk about that almost colloquially here, as in like, oh, it's this Red Green Alliance because they both sort of have the same goal. I have not heard, or had not heard until you just said it, that this playbook not only has already happened in Iran, but that after the alliance happened and the Islamists got what they wanted from the Marxists, they just slaughtered them.
Liz, this is so crazy. This is so crazy. This is what I said back in 2008. I didn't know about the Red. I don't even know if the Red Green Alliance had been named at this point, but I saw what was going on and I put it up on the chalkboard. And honestly, through prayer, I heard fall on your sword on this. So I said it every day I was on the air because I knew it was right. I didn't know about the Red Green Alliance, if it even existed by name at that point. And people said at the time, they don't agree on anything. How will they coexist? I said, it's not about coexistence. It's about putting people together that they have. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. But in the end, they each go, yeah, but we'll bump them off after we get control. We'll take care of them. But don't ever bet against the person who says God is telling them that this is their world. I wouldn't bet on a Marxist for a second over somebody who is a jihadist who will die in the name of God. That's who wins every time. That's who won in Iran, and that's who wins every single time.
It's astonishing. So these conversations, are they like literal conversations? Like, do they actually have a concrete agreement, or is this just kind of like, oh, the Marxists see that the Islamists have the same enemy. The Islamists think that they can
No.
use the Marxists, or how does this
So
this
I don't
work?
think there's any formal agreement between the two, but there are documents, and we've shown the documents where they are talking about forming these alliances. There's no contract between them, but they are very clear on forming these alliances. And it historically has been done over and over and over again. This is the thing that, I mean, you really have to bury your head in the sand. This isn't some crazy far out, hey, you got to believe this part and this part. I can show you. And when you see the special tomorrow at stoptheconquest.com, all of the documents are there. We will provide all of the documents. So when your friends say this isn't happening, you can say, really? Because this is their document in their words. This is their plan. These are the things they say they're going to do. We also, whatever, I haven't seen the edited version, whatever is left, because it's as you said when you started, it's a pretty frightening special.
Yeah, it is.
And we checked with YouTube, and we had to remove a lot of things because it is pretty frightening. But whatever is left, you'll be able to show your friends. And if you want the full special, you go to glennbeck.com/torch. But this is a way you've got to wake your churches up. This is going to be the Knights of Malta. When you have 60,000 Islamists, when they finally announce coming on shore and saying, we're just going to take Europe now. Officially, we're taking it. But we're going to go through the island of Malta. And it took a handful of Christians to stand up and say, you're going to have to go through us, and we will fight and fight and fight and fight. And they actually, literally a couple of hundred Christian knights turned around an entire Islamic army because they knew what they were fighting. They knew who they were fighting, and they knew what and who they were fighting for. It's going to take that kind of awakening. And it is, I don't want to fight a holy war. I've never thought of myself as fighting a holy war. I don't want to fight a war over God for anybody, but they are already fighting a holy war. So the choice is, are you going to sit there and eventually have your children forced to either pay a tax to survive in their own country because they're an infidel, or what? Now is the time to do it without guns or bullets. The longer this goes on, the more of a guarantee that either you towards the end of your life or your children will be fighting Islam in exactly the same scale as they fought it, 1,000 years ago.
It's unbelievable. And by the way, just when you thought the Marxists in our country couldn't get stupider, they don't see what's going to happen to them.
I know.
Gracious.
We concentrate on the LGBTQ people, and we're like, guys, Palestinian, they'll kill you. You go over there, they'll kill you. And they just dismiss it. That's the entire Marxist thing.
Yeah.
And there's proof of it. When it comes to homosexuality in Iran, they are throwing homosexuals off of the rooftops to kill them. But you're standing up for them over the Western civilization. You're a moron. I feel bad for you. I really do. You're that stupid.
By the way, except the Ayatollah's son, allegedly.
Yeah, I know.
He survived thus far. Okay, so this is another part of the special that blew my mind. And again, I had not heard this, even though I consider myself fairly well informed on this topic. Iranians today are warning that the current mayor of New York City, Zohran Mamdani's language, his rhetoric, the things that he says and how he phrases them sounds to them very eerily familiar to exactly how the Ayatollah spoke before he seized power in Iran in 1979. I'd like to watch this portion of the special
Sure.
because it is quite mind-blowing. Go ahead and roll the tape.
Progressivism. This is how modern influence works now in America. You don't lead with your ideology. You lead with values and language, rights and justice, representation. That language is powerful in America, and it should be, but it can also be twisted and strategically deployed.
You'll find Iranian people on social media telling us over and over and over again that the way Mamdani speaks in New York City is exactly the way the Ayatollah was speaking in Iran, word for word, verbatim.
So this is the promises Khomeini made back in 1979, pre-1979. Look at this. He has promised free water, free electricity, and free buses. Now, does that sound familiar? Have you heard it before? Let's say, I don't know, New York 2024 campaign.
Language, framing. It's one of the key ways Islamists gain popularity and power within elected political positions here in America.
What we should look for is a broad kind of a schema, an ideology that we could call perhaps third worldism. It's a way to rearrange our view of politics around a moral binary. There's an oppressor and there's an oppressed. And it tends to be that the oppressed are the other countries in the world. The oppressor is the West, or above all, the United States. An example of this would be the rhetoric that we see someone like Mamdani use when he speaks in the mayoral campaign.
Tell me, why is Palestine a part of your politics?
When you grow up as someone, especially in the third world, you have a very different understanding of the Palestinian struggle.
To describe it as woke is to miss the way that he caters his rhetoric to fit in with this kind of broader ideology that of third worldism. We see it in Europe. We now are seeing it happen here in the United States.
You know, Liz, it is so well documented. The Islam cannot come to colleges and say, we're going to make everybody dress like this. You're going to follow the dress codes or we'll kill you. We're going to marry young girls off at 9 years old. They can't sell that. What they can sell is Marxism. And so they soften the language and say, oh, this other stuff is crazy. They soften the language. But in the meantime, their goal is for a global caliphate. And in the documentary, we show their number one target is America. In fact, they say, if we gain the whole world, but we lose America, we have failed. They must have America. We are the great Satan. Israel's a little Satan. We're the great Satan. They must have America. And they are so far down this road. You know, Texas, they have no idea. Texas is so close to being lost. If Texans have the same problem Americans have on so many fronts. They're so used to Texas being strong, that they say Texas will never fall. And it's that arrogance. And in their arrogance, they will fail and they will fall. We have to realize that we are all vulnerable now because we've been running on fumes for so long and we refuse to name the enemy. We would have never won World War II if we hadn't have said, this is a Nazi, this is their ideology, and it is incompatible with the Western way of life. That doesn't make every German bad. It makes every German that chooses to practice and promote Nazism bad. But we named the enemy. It was not the German, it was the Nazi. And that's what has to happen. Islamism is a political movement. Now, you can argue, and we went back and forth on the special. You can argue that that is just the way Islam is. So all of it is political. I believe in reformation. There hasn't been one, but we talk about it in the special. There are forces and many Muslims that do not want to live this way. But what happens in every society is when they feel like there is nobody coming to help because they've already co-opted everything else, I'm going to go along with it because I don't want to die. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go along with it. We have to be aware that this is entering in Europe its end game stages.
Yeah, especially in London, I think.
Oh yeah.
Listen, that video of Zohran Mamdani eating with his hands actually reminds me of something you said earlier, and this too is interesting. Expound a little bit, and we can show a clip from the special too about the halal food, because you do see that everywhere, and
Yeah.
like it is kind of innocuous, right? Like you see
Yes.
all kinds of dietary restrictions in restaurants
Again,
for different
it's
things. Like if that is a way that they're sneaking it in, that's incredibly sneaky, because even I wouldn't like. I don't really like register it.
okay. So there's a couple of things on this. First of all, it's like I said about the dogs. First you start just taking a poll. Are there too many dogs? And then it just keeps stepping. They're plowing the field. They're plowing the battleground of your mind. Okay. So you're starting to question things you would never question. We have dogs here. I don't care if your religion says that they're halal or not. I don't care. We have dogs here. This is the West. This is America. This is London. Halal food in and of itself is not a problem. We have kosher food. The problem here is name the schools that are now 100% kosher. Name the restaurants like KFC and Popeyes that are now all halal.
What?
Oh yeah, we show you didn't see that in the special. We show that in the special. In Ireland, Popeyes is now all halal. KFC is going all halal.
So like mainstream. So like instead of it being a specialty shop, which is kind of how I guess I organize it in my mind, like sure, have your specialty shop, who cares?
Correct.
They're well, I guess it's the words that you used at the beginning. They're infiltrating these mainstream institutions.
Correct. It is an economic jihad that is slowly permeating. Now, listen, what is the problem with that? Well, I will tell you the problem is you are forcing everyone into that style. You are taking away my choices by saying, yep, that's all going to be halal. And it is happening. You look over to Europe, it is happening in city after city, and it is coming here to America. The other thing, well, you can have kosher. That's fine. But the Jews are not mutilating 9-year-old girls.
Right.
They are not married. This entire culture is antithetical to Western way of life. Judeo way of life may be strange in some ways, but it holds the same principles to be true. I can, because I'm Jewish, I can't go out and take a Christian or a Muslim as a slave. If you're an Islamist, you can take a Jew or a Christian and you can enslave them because Sharia law says you can. That's the problem with this. This is not religion. This is political. This is a political ideology that wants to rule the world and America and all of our Western countries under the Sharia law banner. Can't happen. Can't happen. You cannot coexist.
Well, I think too and this may be a vulnerability that we have in modern America because thanks to libertarianism, but there's not moral equivalence between every set of religious beliefs and the morality or the doctrine that dictates every set of religious beliefs. And I think sometimes we're vulnerable to trying to extend the same moral equivalence to these, but the Jewish religion or a Christian religion or the Muslim religion are not morally equal. And it's okay to say that. That's
Right.
not, it shouldn't be controversial. It shouldn't be offensive. It's just reality.
So if you call people racist long enough, if you call them bigots or whatever, Islamophobes, you've trained people to, especially Americans, we don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. You don't want to be that. We're not that. But what happens? We overcorrect and we become so tolerant of things to try to prove we're not that so much goes under the wire that you don't catch until it's too late. Again, I don't have a problem with Muslims who are practicing their religion. I do have a problem with those who want to force their religion, their way of life, and their laws on the rest of us. I do have a problem with a religion and saying that it is equal to any other religion when it is engaging in marriage of 9-year-old girls to old men, when you're engaging in the beating of women, when you are engaging in any of the things that you see over in the Middle East. Remember, that's not the extremist. That's 80% of the Muslim population overseas. They agree with these things. That, I'm sorry, but it is not equivalent. It is not equal. It is an abomination in the eyes of God to treat women and children the way this religion under Sharia law treats women and children. It's an abomination. And I'm not going to say that it is equal. I am not going to say, well, you come from a different culture, and so you understand that. Well, your culture is wrong, rotted, and evil if that's what you do. And we have to have the moral conviction to say, with love and peace in our hearts, you want to practice nonviolent, not these kinds of things under Sharia law. You want to practice that, and you can live within the laws of the Western civilization. That's fine. But the minute you start to try to put your thumb and you start to violate anything that happens in the Western culture, I'm sorry, you're not equivalent and you're not welcome.
Yeah. Well, that's the $1 million question, right? Is whether this is so inherent to the religion of Islam that you can't really get away from the jihad part, whether it's the terrorism or the cultural jihad, or whether there is a true separation between peaceful Muslims and violent Muslims. And that I mean, maybe that's a conversation for a different day, but that is the $1 million question here.
I will tell you, we address it in the special, and then I went on the air a couple of days later with one of the guys who's in the special, a guy I've known forever, Zuhdi Jasser, who is running for Congress. You know him.
Yeah.
Great guy, naval commander. He is a reformer. He has been trying to reform Islam for a while. And he will say, in its present form, it's not radical. That's the way it is, but it has to be reformed. And in talking to him after the special on the air, I understood it in a completely different way. I was for, yes, there is a separation, and I'm still there, but there is more hesitation hearing it from a guy who's still part of the Muslim religion, but practices it in a very Western way, who is being hunted by the Islamist because he's trying to reform it. He is a Martin Luther. That's important, but it has not happened in Islam, and it won't happen as long as the West allows people to say, oh, no, well, that's just their culture. I'm sorry, they're raping children.
I don't care if it's their culture. It's morally wrong.
It's wrong.
It's morally wrong, and there's objective truth. Listen, you guys have to watch this special. It's out as Glenn said, he had to censor it because YouTube is YouTube. It's called Exposing the Islamist Blueprint for Conquering the West. It's out tomorrow at noon Eastern time. If you want to watch the full thing, though, I would go to torch.com because or stop the
/torch. Or stop
GlennBeck.com/torch or stoptheconquest.com is probably easier. Go for the full version because that's all the backup. Back it up with facts. It's what we do here. You don't take anybody's word for it. Look at the data for yourself. Look at the evidence. Highly recommend that you watch it because if we don't do something now, then we're going to be looking back when we're old and our children are going to be wearing, burqas, and we're going to be like, wait, how did this happen? Well, this is how it happened. And Glenn Beck has been warning about it for a long time. So thank you for making this special. And thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Love you. Thank you.
Love you too. Okay. All right, guys. Again, tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern, Exposing the Islamist Blueprint for Conquering the West. And I do actually want to show this clip. There's one more clip that we didn't play. And I want to show this to you because the halal food thing is pretty crazy. If you're anything like me, you look at halal food and you're like, yeah, that's Muslim food. Okay. Kind of whatever, just like there's specialty shops for all different kinds of, nationalities or styles of food. If it's a specialty shop, why should I care if it exists? That's kind of free market. Again, never really thought about it too much, but it's different when halal, which is an Islamist religious tenet, is being infiltrated and imposed on mainstream food, on the food that you eat. And that's exactly what Glenn Beck talks about in the special. So I do want to show you this little piece before we move on to Qasem Solamani, the Quds commander of the IRGC that Trump killed several years ago. his niece and grandniece were living in our country in Los Angeles until like 2 days ago. And they might still be living in our country, I guess, unbeknownst to the US government. We'll talk about how that happened. If not for Laura Loomer exposing this, bringing it to the State Department, and then Secretary of State Marco Rubio revoking their visas. It's a whole story. We're going to get into that in a second. But take a look at how halal food is infiltrating your food.
Some of the methods of infiltration may be less obvious.
You've got the rise of halal.
This is the most authentic breakfast you're going to find in the whole of the UK. So there's halal sausages, halal bacon, hash browns, masala beans, masala omelette, and a bit of toast as well to go with it.
Houston has a 22% growth, as has Dallas, in year on year over the last 3 years. And the halal industry is worth 2.7 trillion, expected to grow to over 4 trillion by 2033. So this is economic jihad. This is using the levers of the economy to push and grow your religious ideology.
So right away, we need to understand that there's a template and a playbook that is in motion. And the idea is to promulgate a global ideology that rearranges your political communities, your legal system, and your social networks. My name is Nathan Pinkowski, Senior Fellow, Center for Renewing America. To give an example of how this works and how comprehensive it is, I think we should think of halal. There's an interesting case right now in France whereby KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, is offering now several of its restaurants are changing and using halal menu. Now you might think, oh, this is just another option on the menu, isn't it? Or maybe it's an option that is used in one restaurant but not elsewhere. But halal is a way of life, and it obliges other people. It places social pressures upon other people to adopt that.
Hi, is this halal?
All our chicken is halal.
All your chicken is halal?
So what we're talking about here with the way that society becomes more and more Islamic is we're talking about a standard that is enforced slowly but comprehensively and spreads more and more into institutions that we would otherwise think of as fairly neutral, like a restaurant.
If your friends will hear this, they will say, it's food, it makes no difference. What are you even talking about? Because they won't understand the phases outlined. It included secret establishment of leadership, gradual public appearance, utilizing mass media, then open confrontation through political pressure, and eventually seizing power. That was introduced in federal court, not on a podcast, in court. Now, if that language makes you uncomfortable, good, it should. But discomfort doesn't make it false.
I will never see the word halal again and feel the way that I did, I don't know, yesterday about it, when I didn't really think about it and thought, okay, I don't really care if they prepare their food in their own way, whatever. It's their prerogative, I suppose. No. If this is a method of infiltration in our society, and clearly it is, that word has taken on a totally new meaning to me. Again, the whole premise of this documentary, and I highly recommend it, is that what makes us feel fear, I mean, we know that rage bait is kind of king, right? Anything that makes you outraged or angry or furious or frightened, that's the preferred headline of anybody, right? A news organization, a cable news channel, your favorite influencer online, podcasters, anything that can manipulate your emotions, especially negatively, because people get kind of addicted to that. All of us do. And the reality that Islamists are infiltrating our country with the stated goal of this like global caliphate, and they're not going to do it through the terror attacks that, I mean, think about all the attention that was given, to is air travel safe after, several bomb threats in the past couple of weeks, or the lone wolf terror attacks that happened in Texas and in Michigan and in the last couple of weeks. People fear that. You fear going in public, and it becomes the spectacle, the thing that we look at. But that's a distraction. While our emotions are being manipulated, and that's a very real threat too. I'm not trying to dismiss that or belittle that. But the fact that our institutions are being infiltrated by Islamists it's a much more benign sounding threat. You don't feel that fear welling up in you, but it's also much more effective. And that's what's happening. If we don't do something about this, my goodness, I fear for what is going to happen to our country. Okay, again, go to stoptheconquest.com if you want to watch that, which I'm sure you do after seeing these clips. Let's switch topics here to who ICE arrested out in Los Angeles. This is a bananas story to me because this is not a mistake that the niece and grandniece of General Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Quds force of the IRGC, who was killed by Trump several years ago. This is not a mistake or an oversight or a coincidence that these people, the relatives of a terrorist who killed Americans, were living in Los Angeles and posting. And by the way, these are not like dissenting relatives. These are not relatives that are like, hey, we sought asylum here because we disagree with our evil family members. No, these are relatives who agree with the Iranian regime even today and post from our country support of that Islamist theocratic regime. So I'm going to show you this story that was broken by Laura Loomer in just a second. But first, I want to thank today's sponsor, All Family Pharmacy. Our healthcare system is totally broken. You know that. I know that. It is not built for you. It's built to profit insurance companies and corporate pharmacy chains and bureaucrats who think they should decide what you can access and what works for you, even though they don't know you. But your pharmacy doesn't have to be broken too. Listen, I'm a big believer in the parallel economy. When there is a corrupt institution, we need to have an alternative. And that is why I recommend you do your business with All Family Pharmacy. They are an independent American pharmacy fixing what the system got wrong. No insurance games, no middlemen, just real access to the medications that you and your doctor, not Dr. Fauci and Big Pharma, decide that you need. They carry antibiotics, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, medbendazole, methylene blue, and over 400 generic medications for your everyday needs, whether it's blood pressure medications, cholesterol, thyroid, diabetes, you name it, they have it. The process is very simple. It's almost surprising it's so simple because we're so used to a corruptly complex system. But no, with All Family Pharmacy, you just go online, you fill out a short medical form, a licensed doctor reviews it, and if appropriate, your medication ships straight to your door. That is it. Here's my advice. Do not wait until you need something. Be prepared. You don't want to be scrambling for medication and have to resort to using the broken system. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz right now and use code Liz10 for 10% off. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Liz, code Liz10 for 10% off. Okay, here's my question. How is it possible that we did not know, let me put that in quotation marks. How is it not possible that we didn't know that General Qasem Soleimani's relatives were living among us in Los Angeles, no less? Does that make you feel safe? Does that make you feel confident in our government? Listen, it is not possible that this was just a mistake. This was not an oversight. It is not possible that someone, and I don't know who it is, it's not possible that someone didn't know that Soleimani's relatives were living in Los Angeles. And I'll tell you why I can say that definitively, despite not yet having the name of the person who granted them their green cards. Because someone did approve green cards for these individuals, which means that someone deliberately let them in. Now, it's a 3-stage process for how the niece and the grandniece of General Soleimani were allowed into the country. They were first allowed in during the Obama administration. Surprise, surprise. Who is surprised by that? They were let in on tourist visas during the Obama administration. Even that is inexcusable. Why would we ever allow the relatives of terrorists to visit our country? If you're applying for a tourist visa, is there no background check that happens? Do we not run the names of these people and see, oh, your relative kills our people? You're the spawn of terrorists. Maybe you're not going to come and enjoy our beaches. Maybe you can stay in the country that's been ruined by your terrorist relatives. So I would love to know who that someone was during the Obama administration who deliberately let in the niece and grandniece of General Qasem Soleimani by granting them tourist visas. I want the name. But then the process goes on. The process goes on to grant them amnesty and then to grant them permanent residency by granting them green cards. Now, some of this actually happened during the first Trump administration. They were granted amnesty during the first Trump administration. And again, just because it was during the Trump administration doesn't mean that the granting of this privilege to be in our country wasn't done by some deep state bureaucrat who hated Trump. We know the first Trump administration was not only rife with, but significantly undermined by these deep state swamp creatures who hated Trump. So who exactly was it who was part of that process during the first Trump administration? And then during the Biden administration, the very end, the tail end of the Biden administration, when Qasem Soleimani's niece and grandniece were granted permanent residency here in the United States, who approved that? How is it possible that the relatives of terrorists went through 3 different processes and no one noticed that they were the relatives of terrorists? No one looked to see, well, do you agree with your terrorist relatives? Because they do. What were they doing here? Who were they in contact with? Imagine what could have happened if they had gone undetected even longer. They'd already been here for 10 years. And you know what? If not for the reporting of Laura Loomer, the niece and grandniece of General Qasem Soleimani might still be here, undetected, supporting the Islamist theocratic regime in Iran that slaughters citizens for daring to have an opinion, for taking to the streets and speaking out. Thanks to Laura Loomer, who not only uncovered this scandal, but reported it to the State Department. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, to his great credit, revoked the green cards, the permanent residency of these 2 relatives of Qasem Soleimani, and they were immediately arrested by ICE. They're in an ICE detention facility in Texas, and they will be subject to deportation. Thank goodness. But it's still crazy that this even happened. And it begs the question, how many other such terrorists or relatives of terrorists who are sympathetic to the views of their terrorist relatives are here that we don't know about? Well, according to Laura Loomer, who posted this about 15 minutes ago, 13 minutes ago on X, she posted on X, I have many more names of jihadists who are tied to the Iranian regime and other Islamic terror movements who are living here in the U.S. on green cards. I will be reporting all of them to ICE, DHS, and the U.S. State Department. These individuals need to be held accountable because they're actively supporting Iran's regime and IRGC forces who are threatening U.S. national security and calling for the death of U.S. soldiers and President Trump. It's hard to even believe. It's hard to even believe that this is happening in our country. And yet again, mad kudos to Laura Loomer for reporting on this because no one else has. Nobody in mainstream journalism, certainly nobody in the government who looked at this and said, oh, this application that I've gotten, this is someone who'd like to live in our country. Should I approve it or deny it? Well, let me look at who this person is. Okay, relative of terrorism. Oh, that sounds like a great resident. Approved. The only person looking into this is Laura Loomer. And of course, the mainstream media refuses to give her the credit that she deserves. But make no mistake, she does, in fact, deserve the credit. Okay, I want to tell you about something very special that's happening tomorrow. Tomorrow at 12 p.m. Central, that is 1 p.m. Eastern for those of you on the East Coast, I will be going live for an exclusive off-the-record episode, and you are not going to want to miss this one. We will be diving into all of my completely uncensored thoughts about the latest developments surrounding Pam Bondi. We're going to break down what's actually happening, what it means, why it matters, what's coming next, without any big tech censorship. As always, Off the Record is your chance to ask me your questions directly while on air live, but it's only available on Blaze TV. So go to blazetv.com/Liz right now. Use code Liz20 to get $20 off your subscription. That is blazetv.com/Liz. Use code Liz20 to get $20 off your subscription. Again, this Tuesday, which is tomorrow, at noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern. Come ready with your questions and let's get into it. I will see you there. Also, make sure you're subscribed to this show, youtube.com/Liz Wheeler. We're on X at x.com/Liz_Wheeler. And on Spotify, we are The Liz Wheeler Show. Make sure that you share this episode as well as subscribing so that other people in our country, citizens who will be impacted if the Islamists infiltrate our nation, take over, and begin to completely control us, are aware that this is happening before it happens so that we can stop it. Again, share this episode if you will. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.